I'm excited to share today's story with you. I've mostly shared these kind of stories with my family, and I haven't really shared them with too many people, so I'm excited to share it with you. I have done a lot of weird jobs in my life, and it's not like I'm that old, but since I was super young, I've done a lot of weird jobs. And along with those super weird jobs come a lot of weird stories. So I'm going to talk about one of the weird jobs. I guess I could tell you some of my weird jobs before I get started. After I studied abroad in Spain, I came back and all the jobs in my small town were taken. So all that was left was Christmas tree, like shaping, chopping, whatever you want to call it. So what I did was I used a machete. I literally used a machete and I shaped trees, and you had to wear gloves and you had to have like a knee leg guard because you'd often hit your foot and your leg with the machete. You had to have steel-toed boots. As you can guess, I was the only female that was there. There have been other females that have worked that job. But that summer I was the only female. And then I've done so many other things. It's just one. And then another weird job is I worked on my uncle's farm driving semi-truck for sugar beet harvest. And if you're not familiar with that, or you're a city person, aka a person that lives in the city, or even if you're like from a suburb, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. And so my uncles are farmers, and they at the time did this thing like every fall called sugar beet harvest. And everybody kind of knows what harvest is. You know, it's that time of the year in the fall when all the crops have grown and you harvest. So sugar beet harvest is at the time was one of the biggest money, it produced the most money during that season and for the farmers. And also you had to get it done within a certain amount of time before the snow and the first frost, or all would be ruined, the whole season. And sugar beets brought in the most money, so it was a huge time where so many people were hired, people were hired on the farm. And I've done it a few seasons, but the season that I first started was the season, actually, it was before I believe I ever studied abroad and lived in Spain. I think I was 18 when I first did my first sugar beet harvest. And to kind of lay the foundation so you actually understand what I'm talking about. So you typically would drive an 18-wheeler semi-truck. And I remember the first day my uncle wanted me to drive. I wasn't expecting him to have me drive immediately. I'm not sure what I expected. I think maybe I thought I would stay close to the farm, or I would help in different ways. I don't know what I was expecting, but I remember I was gonna go sit in the passenger seat, and we were actually loading up the truck for corn. We weren't doing sugar beets. It was early before sugar beet had started, which also gave me an opportunity to practice driving the semi truck. It's really a humongous truck, and it doesn't drive like a regular car or van or truck or anything you ever drive. It's completely different. And he got up in the driver's seat, opened up the door, and said that I was going to be driving now. And I was like, what? I had no idea that was what he was expecting. And I remember him getting back out of the driver's seat and going around because he turned on the auger, which unloaded corn. Like, corn came out of a grain bin, which is a huge bin, essentially, that holds corn. Exactly what it says, I guess. And corn comes, there's an auger on the inside that moves the corn. And the corn comes out of the conveyor belt and then back up another one and in and shoots into the truck. So you have to be just like, you have to come under the auger or come under the chute just right so it doesn't go over your truck on one side or over on the other side. So you have to line the truck up just perfect. And it has to be right over your truck so the corn doesn't go on the ground and spill. So he was starting to turn on the auger, and then he did this the first time. As the auger is filling up, it gets to a certain point, and you have to run back to the driver's seat because you're standing on top of the semi-truck looking down into the bed of the truck. And when the corn gets a certain amount of height up to where the wood part is on the truck, you have to jump and run back down into the driver's seat and drive and move the truck forward maybe 3-4 feet. And then you park it and put the brake on or whatever, and then run back up to watch it fill up, and then you run back down. And so it's kind of like, it's definitely stressful. I mean, everything with the semi is stressful when you first do it. So he was filling up the truck, and we were going to do a load of corn. And this was before I had ever driven semi, or this was before sugar beet harvest. And so I just remember sitting there, and he was, filling up the truck with corn. And I just remember saying the Our Father, the Lord's Prayer, just sitting there in the driver's seat, like, Lord, if you really want me to do this, help me to know what to do and how to do this. Because I was so nervous to do that. It's pretty intimidating, I'd say, for an 18-year-old to drive a semi like that. And maybe, I don't know. I was intimidated, And so he ended up, I think, driving the first load and showed me what to do when you got to the... Actually, I think, I'm not sure if I actually drove in that moment or if I drove just shortly after. But sugar beet harvest, I do remember him showing me, him doing a round with me, for sugar beet harvest, because that's a whole different thing. It's a similar concept to corn, harvest. The reason all the corn is in the grain bins, first you harvest it from the field, and then you bring it from the field to the grain bin. I think I'm doing seeds. I wonder I'm actually don't think I've ever. I think we only would bring them from the. Actually, now I'm getting mixed up. I'm getting seeds and corn mixed up. So corn we would just take from the grain bin to the plant, and the plant they would take the corn. The grain bin dries the corn that was on our farm. But anyways, jumping to sugar beet harvest. So they do 12-hour shifts. So it is shift work. Typical farm type stuff, I guess. And excuse me. That's what I get for making this podcast at night. So I typically got there at midnight because you had to make sure that the guy before you, obviously I'm the only girl doing this, also because it's not really a woman's world. So I would get there at midnight, and the guy before me would bring his truck in. He would fuel it up and wash off the windows and clean out all of his stuff. He would check the tires, you have to kick all the tires to make sure that they're, pumped appropriately, filled with air, fill up with fuel, clean out your car of all the junk because you worked a 12-hour shift, clean off the windows, stuff like that. And then you park your truck, and then you go inside and you switch. And then, so I would come out, and my shift would start at midnight, and you head right out to the field. So you would have to get in touch with the lifter. So the lifter is a guy, typically one or two guys are out in this tractor that's called the lifter. And what the lifter does is it goes down the rows, and it literally just lifts the sugar beets, which are like super heavy, like beets, except they're white in the middle and they're super sweet. And sugar beets is what you get your Mountain Dew, a lot of your Coke products. It comes from the sugar beets. So it's a huge industry. And so, yeah, I mean, you would go straight out to the field. And so we were in North Dakota. The roads out on the, everything is marked, everything is 1 mile, in, the whole state is basically cut up into squares, squares, like a field. It's just you'll go 1 mile, you'll go straight, and then you'll hit a road, and that's a mile. And then if you keep going straight, you'll hit another mile, and there's another road, and then it's a mile. So it's a square mile. The whole, one patch of land is like a square, and it's all a mile in every direction. But there's so many of these, square mile roads that the majority of the roads aren't marked. They don't have signs that say you're on Phillip Street or 6th Avenue. Because there's so many, it's every mile you're getting a new road. And a lot of these roads are dirt roads. It's not paved. So, and the majority of it is land. So it's not all marked. You don't know, if you're just driving through, you don't know what's land is whose, or what it's called, or what road you're on. And there'd be a bajillion roads that are all dirt roads that are mainly for land, and people don't drive on them, because the whole state is basically square miles. So anyways, it's pitch black, dark, and you're driving on gravel roads trying to find this field. Now you have to get in touch with the lifter to know, like what field are you in at this time? And a lot of the fields have different names because my uncles would rent land from different people to grow their crops on. So typically all the land was the owner's name that he was renting land from. So I would have to get in touch. So we had the CV radios, the trucker radios. You city folk might know it as, but trucker radio, and you'd have to be on a certain channel. You can't be on a different channel. You have to know what channel all your farmers, are on. What you're like, depending on which, who you're with. As a collective farm community, you get a certain channel. And if I would jump, my other uncle was on a different channel, so I would jump to their channel and hear what they're talking about. And then I would jump back to the uncle I worked for and be listening to what they're talking about. So it was kind of fun because you could be jumping on different radios and just listening to random conversations and what they're talking about. Now, mostly during the day, they're literally just like talking about stuff you have no idea, like what's going on, and they're talking about like random farm stuff. But at night, people are a lot more bored, I guess you could say. Like they're still doing stuff, but so we would get people talking and laughing and joking on the radios, but you would have to get the attention of the lifter to know what field they were at. So you'd have to jump on the radio, get a hold of whoever's on the lifter, or I'd have to call an uncle or one of my cousins on the radio and ask where we're at. And so then you would have to memorize pretty much where the field was that you were going to be going to, because the big highways were marked, but the little roads off the fields were not marked. So you kind of can know, but really, unless you've been there during the day, you're not going to know where it is. So you go out to the field, and then there's like only certain approaches. There's only certain ways you can get into the field. You can't just drive from the road onto the field. A lot of times there's a ditch or something in the like dirt or whatever, the road. Like you can't just drive on the grass with the semi, because when you're driving a semi, if the ground is uneven, you can actually flip or tip your truck. And a lot of guys have done that out in the field, because what I'm about to tell you. So you drive in the approach, which is basically like a connection to the field from the road, and you drive your truck in, and you have to drive wide. So you drive in not like a regular car, but you take up the whole driveway, the whole road, essentially, to get in to the field. So you take the whole approach so you're driving in, and then you keep driving forward as if you're going to go off the edge, and then you turn, taking up the entire approach, the entire connection from the field to the road to the field, and then you turn in, and then now you're in the field, and the field is all like, don't want to say plowed, but it's like crazy bumpy, because they're just tearing the ground and pulling up the sugar beets. Now the lifter is literally lifting up, like I said before, the sugar beets out of the ground, and they're putting it's shaking out all the dirt that you pulled up with it, and then all the sugar beets go into this like big basin in the tractor, and the dirt is shaken off, and then it goes up a conveyor belt, and then it turns off to the side, off to the right of the lifter. I'm sure you could go different directions, but different lifters are different. But the one that we used, the lifter was off to the right, the conveyor belt, and then it just drops the sugar beets into the bed of your truck. Now, the tricky part is the lifter goes slow, very slow, because it's lifting sugar beets, heavy sugar beets out of the ground. It's just pulling them out, and they're pulling the roots, like everything. And the dirt is like tough ground, and so it's just like crazy. So you pull the semi up maybe a foot away from the lifter. Now, you don't want to get it too close because you could just rip off. That conveyor belt leans down. So if you get too close, you could actually mess up the lifter and tear off the conveyor belt, and you could wreck the bed of the semi. So you have to be maybe about 1.5 feet exactly away from the lifter, because you also have to make sure that the end of the conveyor belt is in the very center of your truck, so that the sugar beets are all laying like at the center of your truck. Because if your truck is unbalanced, you could get pulled over by a cop when they see that your sugar beets are all wackadoo. Like, if it's unbalanced, it's dangerous for you to be driving on the road. You will get pulled over, and that's a different story. How many times I got pulled over. And so you have to be exactly lined up perfectly. Now, you're driving an 18-foot truck, and you're driving in like lines. You know how like in the field you'll see the lines, the perfect lines of where they've planted? Well, not everything is perfect, because the field that you're driving on is already lifted. The sugar beets are lifted out. The lifter is driving where there's sugar beets still in the ground. So when you are driving, oftentimes your truck can be like trying to swerve all around. And then you also typically have to only drive about 2 to 3, maybe 5 miles an hour, maybe. But often it's about 2 or 3 miles an hour, maybe 5. But the lifter is going very slow. So you have to be going exactly straight. You don't want to swerve from side to side, because again, you could take off and ruin the lifter. You could ruin your truck. So you have to be aware of a lot of things. You're staying straight. You're not going faster. You're staying at a complete steady speed. And again, you're driving a humongous load. Like, I am totally blanking on how many tons that a semi weighs. And then now you're loading it with sugar beets that are extremely heavy. And so, yeah, it's just a lot of concentration to stay exactly straight, not get too close. They often will have like a rope hanging that you can line your truck up with the semi, like the semi up with the lifter, so you don't go in too far. Like, because if you go in past the rope, you're going to start to get in the territory of ripping off the conveyor belt off of the lifter. So, all that to say, you have to exactly be in that, going that exact speed, that exact closeness to the semi. Granted, you're in pitch black dark at the night shift. And, yeah. And then when you come to the end of the row, you have to either turn with the semi or stop, let the lifter go ahead of you, and then get back into position to get back into the row, and then you have to catch up with him, because you might not want to turn at the same time the lifter's turning, because he has to readjust. So there's just like a lot going on, and he might also want to be talking to you, and telling you like this, whatever, like I'm gonna do this. So you're also trying to talk on the radio. There's just so much that it is involved, and that's just putting sugar beets in the semi. So once you're full, you have to go. One nice thing is you don't have to cover the sugar beets, so you don't have to put a cover on like with corn and seeds. You have to wrap your truck, basically putting the cover on it. But with sugar beets, you don't have to. So you're full, and then now you go back out the approach that you came in or another one, and then now you have to make your way to the piler, is what it's called. It's not a place where anyone poops or anything. It's literally called the piler. So you have to drive typically about 30 minutes, find your way from the unmarked streets to gravel roads to the highway and make your way to the piler. Now, the piler is the place, it's the plant where you drop off the sugar beets. And so hundreds and hundreds of people and different farms are doing this all at the same time this harvest season, because sugar beets are ripe at this right time and they need it all, and the plant is only open for a certain amount of time and then it will be closed. So, and also you don't want your sugar beets, in the ground until it snows or the first frost. It will ruin the sugar beets, like I said, so you got to get it done quick. So I drove to the piler. You drive to the piler, and then you basically get in line, and then there's like so many trucks waiting in line to dump all their sugar beets at the piler. So you're, let's say it's like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and you're waiting in this humongous long line of semi-trucks. And this is where you start to like laugh and joke with the other people that are working at this time and on the shift. And weird stuff would happen. You'd see weird wild animals like wolves or mountain lions running around. So people would be talking about that, or weird stuff would happen, or joking about inside jokes and cracking jokes or whatever. And yeah. So anyways, when you finally get your turn to get up to the piler, you have to, so the ramp that you essentially drive your truck up is essentially the exact same size as your semi, except 1 inch wider on each side of your semi truck. So you have to like drive your truck up on this ramp, and then you only get 1 inch on either side of your truck to perfectly line up your truck on the piler ramp. And you drive through, and then it all of a sudden there'll be like a stoplight type situation. It'll be green, green, green until you get to a certain point, and there's somebody watching you from a tower, and they'll push yellow and then red, and you stop. And then you have to do all these in order. So first I'm kind of blanking the exact order, but if you do them out of order, your truck could flip, or it would try to jump into gear because it's a manual, so it will try to jump forward, and you could totally wreck the truck. You could, kill it. You could flip it. It's just really dangerous. So, putting it in neutral, and then putting the e-brake on, and making sure that it's locked in. And then you want to unlock the bed of the truck, and then you want to push the button to make the bed of the truck go up. And so it will slowly go up, and they'll be telling you, there'll be an arrow pointing up, and so the guy watching will be watching your truck and watching how many sugar beets are coming out. And so he's kind of directing you with the arrows. He'll tell you to go up, so you lift up your bed of your truck, and eventually the sugar beets start to slide out, and then they'll go onto this other conveyor belt that pops up behind your truck, and all the sugar beets come out, and they slide out, and then he'll tell you to stop because sugar beets are sliding out, and you can't have too many sugar beets sliding out because it will clog the conveyor belt. So you have to be watching very carefully to his signals, and then he'll tell you to go, it'll put the arrow up again, and then you can continue to lift the bed of your truck until all the sugar beets are out, and then he'll tell you to put it down. So you put your truck down, the bed of your truck down, and then oftentimes there's a lot of dirt left over, so you put your truck down. Some people are super ridiculous and wild, and they leave the bed of their truck up and drive with the bed of their truck up. It's just that they're getting lazy, and they're getting they want to drive quicker. So they'll leave the truck up, and then they'll drive forward, and they'll try to scrape all the dirt up while it's still up in the air. And when you're getting off the ramp, if your truck doesn't go exactly like both tires off, you could again flip your truck, but guys do it all the time. And I often would put the whole bed of the truck down, and then drive forward, and then lift the truck back up, and then scrape the dirt out. And then you have to make sure that that's another thing. You have to unclamp the back of your truck. So there's a door on the dump truck, and you have to unclamp that before you start lifting it when you're on the piler. So that's part of the order. So you have to make sure after that there's no sugar beets or dirt in that clamped area. Because if you do, it can either unclip when you're reloading, and all the sugar beets will fall out, and then those are wasted. And people get so mad because then you have all these sugar beets, and you have to lift your truck up, dump all the sugar beets on the ground, and those get wasted. Or you end up staying there, and you just hold up the whole line. Everybody has to go around you, and then you have to throw all the sugar beets one by one, and those sugar beets are heavy, and to throw them I don't know how far, 10 feet in the air is a humongous deal. And if you didn't notice it right away when all the sugar beets were being loaded in your truck, you're going to have such a mess, and it slows everybody down, and everybody gets frustrated. So you want to make sure while you're at the plant that you clamp the door, the dump truck door. You want to make sure that you push it in, and then you clamp it, and then you go check to make sure it's fully clamped. You could have clamped it, and then the door missed it. If it was hanging up a little bit, if the bed of the truck was up, the door wouldn't fully get shut. So you want to make sure that it's completely down, and that it's completely locked. And then you want to drive off the plant, and before you actually leave the plant, you get a stub, and it shows, so you weighed your truck before you came in, and then they weigh you on your way out, and so you get a ticket for every, and they mark it for every load of sugar beets, and then that gets reported back to the farmer, and then the plant is paying the farmer for every load. And so That is like one load, and then you drive 30 minutes, and if you're not at the same field, you have to figure out where the new field is. So, this is where my story begins, now that you know a little bit about sugar beet harvest. So, one night, I was driving semi, and it's pitch black, it's the middle of the night, midnight, 1 a.m., that kind of deal. I was just starting my shift, and I believe I am not sure if I was already trying to get a hold of people, and people were not answering me. My uncle and my cousin, they were just frustrated with me asking so many questions. They actually turned off their radios. So they were not answering my questions anymore, because I couldn't find the field. I think we had been on one field and then they had switched, and I didn't know where they were, again, because the roads are not marked. So I was asking, and I ended up calling their phones, and neither of them picked up. And I had known the name. I think I knew the name of the field. I just didn't know exactly where the field was. Now, farmers that have been doing this for years get really frustrated with people that don't know where the field is, city folk. And that was me, I had forgotten where this field was. I don't think I had been there yet. They had switched fields while I was at the piler. And so I was driving around, and I couldn't find this field. And I kept trying to talk to them, and they weren't answering. They turned off their radios. Nobody was answering. Called their phones. They didn't answer. So I kind of had a faint idea, but I was completely lost, and I had been turned around, and I'd been driving for probably 30 minutes, and I was getting so frustrated, and it's pitch black, and no roads are marked. So what am I going to do? I just went to go find the highway, and I knew that this field was close to these two different highways, and then this one road that is still a gravel road, but it's a bigger road that is marked. And I think the highway was 13. I know the highway was 13, but then it was another highway that was 18. And then there was a crossroad that I believe is 16. And the rest of the roads were not marked. These are bigger roads. Some were gravel, but one was paved. And so I couldn't find the field. Nobody was answering. I was so upset. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I saw this one tractor sitting in the field, and the light was on in the tractor. So it's pitch black, and I'm like, I have no idea. I feel like I'm close, but I feel like at the same time, I'm so far away. So I park my truck on the side of this gravel road, which there's really no side. You're literally taking up the entire road. A car would have to go down in the ditch to get around you at this point, on this type of road I was on, and it's not marked. So I park my truck, and I jump out of the cab, and I start running through the field in pitch black. And the fields are they're kind of like a plowed field, only worse. So there's chunks, huge rock hard chunks of dirt, and it's all completely unlevel. It's roll your ankle city, big time. At any moment you're gonna fall over and bite the dust, and it's gonna be so painful because the dirt is literally rock hard. And I'm running through it, and in the pitch black dark, and you can't see. So I'm running through it, and I get to his tractor. I run up, and there's a tractor there, and I don't even know if I saw a person in there. And I just start knocking on the window. It's all glass. The door, everything is glass. And there's this guy, and he's got his feet up on the steering wheel and his cowboy hat over his face. He was sleeping with the light on in his tractor. in the middle of a field, and I was knocking on the door, just a random stranger in the middle of a field. Yeah, I don't know what he was sleeping there for. I don't know why he was there, just like not even doing anything. And I don't even think that he was a piler. Maybe he was a piler. I mean, a lifter guy in a lifter, but I can't remember. But it looked like a different kind of tractor, that it wasn't a lifter. And he just was so startled, and he got up and he was like, hi, like, what can I, hello? Like, what, hello? Like, he was so, like, startled, like, crazy startled. And I was like, so do you know where we are? Like, where is here? And he kind of looked at me super funny. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, what road are we on? And he told me that so many roads this way was the highway I was looking for. And I was actually really close. And I was probably driving around in circles around it. He told me it was like 4 miles this way, like 4 square miles this way. And then also another very confusing thing when you're in North Dakota driving sugar beet harvest is that they don't say, like, they might say, yeah, they do say miles, but they'll say like this: 4 miles east, and then go 6 miles west, and then go 4 miles north, and then go 2 miles south, and then go 5 miles east. And so you have to know exactly what direction you're going at all times. And then again, nothing's marked. And oftentimes there's half miles. So even if they say go a mile this way, there's often like a half mile. And then you're completely thrown off because you thought you were going a mile and now you're only a mile and a half. This happens a lot. All right. So yeah, messed up, okay? So anyways, he gave me directions and I found the field. But I remember telling my uncles this story and they thought it was the funniest thing in the whole world because they just were putting themselves in that situation. Like, you're just chilling in you're often just chilling in your tractor, and then a random stranger, I guess that doesn't happen, runs up on you and starts asking you questions. So that's my trucker story for today. But I have so many more stories, trucker stories. I'd have to look back in some of my journals of all the weird things that happened. I have manure stories. Where we worked with cow manure, turkey manure, and turkey manure isn't just turkey poop. Turkey manure out there is turkey, like, decomposing turkey bodies and turkey poop, and then a lot of the bodies are decomposing, so it smells straight ammonium. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's like it burns your nose hairs off. Like, it's crazy how strong it is. And I have different stories where, like, nobody could get into the piler, like, to get their sugar beets, to dump sugar beets, like the last load of the day. But because I was like this only pretty girl driving, they would let me go in. So my uncles would send me to go to do the extra load. Or I would always get pulled over by the cops, and everybody was making fun of me because I was the only one getting pulled over because they just wanted to talk to me. Like, I don't know, just funny things would always happen while I was driving. So until next time, hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.